distinguished Professor Dharamjit Singh Parmar, Vice Chancellor Bhag Singh University, who has just left us because of his occupation in the convocation at his university. Madam Dr. Jasreen Kaur, the principal in absentia of the college. Professor Rajiv Lochan, who is our teacher, guide and philosopher. Dr. Suman Chopra, the head of the department. Dr. Karanveer Singh Maan, my dear student, who has done PhD with me and the convener of this conference. Dear colleagues, dear students, friends, ladies and gentlemen. At the very outset, I congratulate the organizers of this seminar to have chosen a wonderful theme. The theme is pertinent because we know about many known heroes who had made the great sacrifices for the freedom movement. But still we do not know about the millions of other freedom fighters that we need to know about them. And Professor Dharamjit Singh in his address was talking about the role of the non-violent movement. But I would like to emphasize the point that the role of revolutionaries, that should also not be underestimated. So they both had contributed, towards the freedom of the country, and that is why there is a need to focus on their role as well. So in this context, I have also chosen a personality who was the great revolutionary, Baba Sohan Singh Bhakna. He was the president of the Gadar party, and I think in that manner our discussion, which has been initiated in this seminar, is justified, because after having listened to the views of Professor Dharamji on the role of the non-violent Gandhian movement, we need to also know about the role of the revolutionary movement, and it will be a befitting tribute to the personality of Baba Sohan Singh Bhakna, who was the exponent of the revolutionary movement, that is the Gadar movement. So I shall be talking lesser about the movement, but I shall be talking more about the leader of the movement, Sohan Singh Bhakna, and what were the influences in the making of this great personality. Born in January 1870 in the maternal village near Amritsar, Sohan Singh Bhakna, from a very ordinary man, rose to the position of the charismatic leader of the revolutionary movement, Gadar party, of which he was the president, first president of the Gadar movement and the Gadar party. So various influences and conditions in personalities and in experiences had worked from time to time towards the making and the molding of this powerful personality, who missed no opportunity which fell his way to avail it well. He belonged to the very rich peasant family, which owned the land of 65 acres and was perhaps the wealthiest family in the village. And this large property and the land did not see any fragmentation, because Sohan Singh himself, his father and grandfather happened to be the only sons in the family. Karan Singh was his father, who was the kind-hearted man with a charitable disposition. And at the age of 1, Sohan Singh Bhakna lost his father. His father again was a very benevolent personality who was kind enough to extend a helping hand to the poor and the needy, especially at the occasions of distress like famine and other such times. After the loss of his father, Sohan Singh Bhakna was placed under the fond care and love of 3 women in the family, One was his mother, Ram Kaur, stepmother, Har Kaur, and grandmother, Hukam Kaur. Sohan Singh did receive the elementary education, but in the Gurudwara from a priest and mostly orally. But he had a very sharp mind to grasp the things. So whatever he learned it well. And at the age of 16, he completed his primary education in a primary school of the village. And after that, he could not continue with his formal education because there was no school, middle or the high school available in the village or in its vicinity. And 3 women, they out of their love and affection did not want to send Sohan Singh to the far off place for study. But there is no denying the fact that Sohan Singh's education formally had ended, but he continued his efforts to receive the knowledge from the various personalities and the experiences that he gathered throughout his life. It is generally said that psychology of inspiration works differently on different people at different situations. It might lay dormant for a very long time, and then someone and something may trigger the personality into the action. And in case of Sohan Singh Bhakna, we see that psychology of inspiration was triggered into the political activism in his life only after he had migrated to America to earn living for himself and for his family. Among many influences, the first and the foremost reference will be made to his father, who was a true devout of Sikhism and had played the part of great influencer in the life of Sohan Singh Bhakna. Though we have mentioned the fact that Sohan Singh was just one, when he lost his father, but the compassion of his father for the poor was the characteristic trait of him, which was always kept alive even after his death. And his mother made sure that their house was open, just like when his father was alive, to all the poor and needy people. And therefore, the family extended help to the poor and needy. And these people, they might belong to any caste, creed, or religion. They were welcome in the house. And they were given the help in the form of sugarcane juice or the grain, food, etc., etc. And the father of Sohan Singh, Karam Singh, though he was a wealthy man, but he did not save up much wealth in cash for the family after his death, just because of the reason that he had been very liberal as a Sikh, devout to help the poor, and his kindness and benevolence was something which was perpetuated in the house after his death. And this all had the unbounded imprint and the impact on the mind of Sohan Singh Bhakna, which helped him make his own personality a very strong personality and becoming the leader later on. पर दोस्तों, चंगा प्रभाव हमेशा जिंदगी च नहीं रहता, क्योंकि तुसी भी शायद अनुभव किया होएगा, और जदों भी तुसी कोई शख्सियत बारे पढ़ते हो हिस्ट्री दे विच या दूसरे सब्जैक्ट्स दे विच या आम जिंदगी दे विच, तुसी देखते हो कि चंगे प्रभाव के नाल माड़ा प्रभाव भी किसी की जिंदगी दे विच आंदा है। पर इस माड़े प्रभाव तो भी असी कुछ सीखते हाँ, कुछ पाठ पढ़ते हाँ जो कि साडी जिंदगी दे विच काम आंदा है। सोहन सिंह भकना दे जीवन दे विच भी इंज ही होया। असी चंगे प्रभावां की गल कर रहे हाँ, असी देख रहे हाँ कि किवें उन्हां दे पिता जी जिहड़े कि जदों 1 साल दे सन गुजर गए सन, उन्हां दा प्रभाव बहुत चंगा प्रभाव उन्हां दे उपर पिया और जीवन दे विच एक पाठ सिखा के गए। लेकिन उन्हां दी यूथफुल डेज दे विच असी देखते हाँ कि उन्हां दे उपर माड़ा प्रभाव भी पिया, और ये माड़ा प्रभाव उन्हां दे दोस्तां दा सी। ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਇਨੋਸੈਂਸ ਭੋਲੇਪਨ ਦਾ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਉਠਾਉਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਸਨ ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵੈਲਥ ਸੀ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਐਕਸਪਲੋਇਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਸਨ. So we see the human tendency, that whosoever is wealthy and well off, the people would hover around him sometimes to exploit the innocence and the wealth of that person. And this is what had exactly happened with Sohan Singh Bhakna, who could not comprehend the wretched influence of his friends who flocked around him all the time to exploit him. So he was perhaps too immature and inexperienced to understand the pervasive propensity of the friends who were there around him all the time like leeches. So these friends, they misled him to the evil pursuits like drinking, eating meat, lethargy, borrowing money, sinking in debt, and so on and so forth. And Sohan Singh very liberally would spend money on them like water. So much so that the amount of debt reached 3,000 to 4,000 rupees when the shopkeepers began to grumble. So the mother advised Sohan Singh Bhakna that it will be better for him to stay away from the friends because otherwise he'll have to face the humiliation and embarrassment. सिर्फ बेइज्जती ते सिर्फ जिल्लत उसनूं सहनी पएगी जे उसने अपने दोस्तां दा साथ ना छड्डिया. But Sohan Singh paid no heed to the prudent advice of his mother and continued to indulge in the bad company, and he had somehow started enjoying that company of the friends because he did not know about the intentions of his friends. So the situation came when 32 acres of the land had been mortgaged just because of being spendthrift, and these times became the times of acute misery, not only for Sohan Singh but the entire family. And Sohan Singh later regretted of having wasted 10 youthful years of his life before the new phase began, and he took the path of reforming himself. Now अपने आप ਨੂੰ ਇਸੇ ਸੁਧਾਰ ਸਕੇ ਸੋਹਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਭਕਨਾ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਫਿਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਅੱਛਾ ਇਨਫਲੂਐਂਸ ਔਰ ਇੰਪੈਕਟ ਪਿਆ ਪਰਸਨੈਲਿਟੀ ਦਾ, ਔਰ ਉਹ ਪਰਸਨੈਲਿਟੀ ਸੀ ਬਾਬਾ ਕੇਸਰ ਸਿੰਘ. ਬਾਬਾ ਕੇਸਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਇੱਕ ਨੋਬਲ ਸੇਂਟ ਸੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਆਪਣੇ ਧਰਮ ਦਾ ਔਰ ਆਪਣੇ ਟੀਚਿੰਗਸ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਸਨ ਭਕਨਾ ਵਿਲੇਜ ਉਸਦੇ ਆਸ-ਪਾਸ, and he himself belonged to the village Mohava, which was very closely situated to Bhakna village. Baba Kesar Singh, with all his noble traits, believed not in the outwardness of religion. He had rejected idolatry and idleness. He had denounced untouchability. He discriminated none based on caste, creed or community. He preached unity and love for humanity, and he advocated noble deeds. So any ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵਸ਼ਾਲੀ ਸ਼ਖਸੀਅਤ ਸਨ ਬਾਬਾ ਕੇਸਰ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਰਿਲੀਜੀਓਸਿਟੀ ਦਾ ਔਰ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਪਰਸੋਨਾ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵ ਸਭ ਉੱਤੇ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਸੀ, ਅਤੇ ਸੋਹਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਪ੍ਰਾਣੀ ਸਨ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵਿਤ ਹੋਏ ਬਿਨਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਸਨ. ਸੋਹਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੀ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਬਾਬਾ ਕੇਸਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਨਾਲ ਉਦੋਂ ਹੋਈ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹ ਪਿੰਡ ਭਕਨਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੇ ਪ੍ਰਵਚਨ ਦੇਣ ਆਏ ਹੋਏ ਸਨ ਅਤੇ ਕੀਰਤਨ ਕਰਨ ਆਏ ਹੋਏ ਸਨ. ਸੋ ਸੋਹਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਭਕਨਾ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੀਰਤਨ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਇੰਨਾ ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵਿਤ ਹੋਇਆ that he invited him to his house for the dinner, and this invitation was readily accepted by Baba Kesar Singh. So in the night he came to his house, and after the dinner a large congregation of the people was arranged by Bhakna at his home, and this was perhaps the largest congregation since the death of his father. So after the dinner there was the kirtan and after the Kirtan was over, Baba Kesar Singh assured the family of Sohan Singh Bhakna that the path of reform was not impossible for Sohan Singh, and it is possible that he forsakes all his evil pursuits. But the way this message was conveyed to Sohan Singh Bhakna had the magical impact on him. On his way back, while Sohan Singh was going or accompanying Baba Kesar Singh to see him off, so Babaji told him that there is the way and there is the method to renounce the bad company of the friends. And the method alone is that you develop a strong hatred for the evils and for the pursuits that you do not like and you want to just leave or renounce. So Sohan Singh Bhakna was greatly touched and overwhelmed with the polite, indirect way of Baba Kesar Singh of giving him the message, and this had a great impact on his mind, and he decided to renounce the bad company of his friends without any persuasion on his own. And you know what he did? He invited his friends and he smashed the bottle of wine in front of them, declaring that he was ending the friendship of drinking with them forever. And then he did not drink. So he became the reformed and the transformed personality. But to say that this had bettered the financial views of the family would not be correct. Because now he had started spending not on the friends but on the religious congregations that he used to organize for Baba Kesar Singh at his home, and also for organizing Hola Mohalla annually, in his native village. So he started spending liberally, on these occasions, which consumed a lot of family wealth, say about 3,000 to 4,000 rupees annually, and which will drain the wealth of the family further. So much so that 32 acres of the land of the family had to be mortgaged because of the liberal spending of Sohan Singh on the religious congregations. So what we see is that the financial woes for the family continued as before, and perhaps with more intensity now than ever before. And the wealthiest family of the village now was reduced to the position of financial bankruptcy. Now Sohan Singh became conscious and he began making the sincere efforts and endeavors to improve the economic health of the family and to take the family out of financial bankruptcy. So at first he tried his hands on his farm. So he began cultivating his fields with his own hands and with the agricultural implements that he bought for himself. But this experiment did not succeed because he was not used to making such a hard labor in the farm, and he had not done this before this time. So this did not work, and then he decided that he must migrate to the foreign lands to try his luck and destiny. And this is how he decided to migrate to America, like many other Punjabis, so that he could earn well there and could save up some money to clear off the debts of the family back home. But when we talk of the influences, there were many other influences which had actually impacted his mind, and one such influence was the influence of Kuka movement. The first Kuka leader with whom he came in contact was, of course, Baba Kesar Singh himself, and through him he got to know about the activities and the political activism of the Kuka leaders, that how they were bold enough not to accept the British postal system or discard foreign clothes, and how 66 pukas with a great indomitable courage had sacrificed their lives before the British cannons in Malerkotla to preserve their unity and traditions. So Sohan Singh himself remained in touch with the Puka leaders whom he invited in Hola Mahalla festival in his native village and otherwise also. And he was overwhelmed with the noble ideals of the Pukas, which inspired him to participate in the agrarian agitation of 1907. So agrarian agitation of 1906-07 had started in Layalpur district and the surrounding districts, and the leadership was commanded by the leaders like Sardar Ajit Singh, Lala Lajpat Rai and others. And the agitation was aimed to protest the government's colonization bill, according to which the government was increasing the taxes and was also imposing the new taxes on the people who had settled down in these newly developed colonies of the British, including Abhyana, the irrigation tax, and other such taxes. And they also were forcing them to forsake their rights of inheritance, to plant the specific number of the trees, and not to cut the trees in their own land, even with the prior permission of the government. So this had evoked a very strong reaction among the agriculturists, and that is why we see this agitation. Sohan Singh remarks in Jeevan Sangram that this bill meant that the land was not owned by the colonizers but by the government. So ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੀ ਜੋ ਜ਼ਬਰਦਸਤੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਦੀ ਮਨਜ਼ੂਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਉਸ ਸਮੇਂ ਕਲਟੀਵੇਟਰਸ ਐਗਰੀਕਲਚਰਿਸਟ ਨੂੰ, ਤੇ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਹੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੀਡਰਸ਼ਿਪ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਹੋਈ ਲਾਜਪਤ ਰਾਏ ਔਰ ਅਜੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਜਿਹੇ ਮਹਾਨ ਲੀਡਰਸ ਦੀ, ਨੇਤਾਵਾਂ ਦੀ, ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਐਜੀਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਲਾਇਲਪੁਰ ਔਰ ਆਸ-ਪਾਸ ਦੇ ਇਲਾਕੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤੀ ਔਰ ਇਹ ਕਾਫੀ ਸਟਰੋਂਗ ਹੋਈ, ਕਾਫੀ ਇੰਟੈਂਸ ਐਜੀਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਸੀ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਰੇਲਵੇ ਲਾਈਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਟ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ, ਨੁਕਸਾਨ ਪਹੁੰਚਾਇਆ ਗਿਆ ਔਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਰੇਲਵੇ ਵਰਕਰਸ ਸਨ ਲਾਇਲਪੁਰ ਡਿਸਟ੍ਰਿਕਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਰੇਲਵੇ ਆਫਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਔਰ ਰੇਲਵੇ ਲਾਈਨਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਸਾਫ਼ ਇਨਕਾਰ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵ ਵਾਲੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਐਜੀਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਕਾਮਯਾਬ ਤਾਂ ਹੋਣੀ ਹੀ ਸੀ, ਐਂਡ ਵੀ ਸੀ ਦੈਟ ਐਜੀਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਵਾਜ਼ ਸਕਸੈਸਫੁਲ ਬਿਕੋਜ਼ ਦ ਬਿਲ ਕੁਡ ਨੈਵਰ ਬਿਕਮ ਦ ਐਕਟ। ਸੋ ਇਹੀ ਜਿੱਤ ਸੀ ਇਸ ਐਜੀਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ, ਔਰ ਬਾਬਾ ਸੋਹਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਾਰਟੀਸਿਪੇਟ ਕੀਤਾ। ਇਨਡਾਇਰੈਕਟ ਰੋਲ ਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਹ ਲੀਡਰਸ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਲਿਟਰੇਚਰ ਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੜ੍ਹਦੇ ਸਨ ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਡਿਸਟਰੀਬਿਊਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਸਨ, ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹਾਈ ਗੋਲਸ ਹਨ ਔਰ ਮਨਸ਼ਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸੀ ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਦੇਸ਼ ਸਨ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਤੱਕ ਪਹੁੰਚਾਉਂਦੇ ਸਨ। ਸੋ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੰਮ ਹੈ ਸੋਹਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਸ ਐਜੀਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀਤਾ, ਦਿਸ ਵਾਜ਼ ਅ ਪ੍ਰੀਲੂਡ ਐਂਡ ਦਿਸ ਵਾਜ਼ ਅ ਪ੍ਰੀਪਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਫॉर ਦ ਲਾਰਜਰ ਰੋਲ ਵਿਚ ਵਾਜ਼ ਕੱਟ ਫॉर ਹਿਮ ਇਨ ਦ ਫਿਊਚਰ, ਐਂਡ ਆਫ ਕੋਰਸ ਹੀ ਡਿਡ ਲਰਨ out of this agitation, which became a lesson for him and a learning for him of the life. Then the Sikhism and its values. ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਜ਼ਿਕਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਵੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਪਿਤਾ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵ ਇੰਨਾ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਮਨ 'ਤੇ ਸੀ ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਸੱਚੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਹੋਣ ਦੇ ਨਾਤੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਮਦਦ ਕਰਨੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ, ਵੰਡ ਕੇ ਛਕਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਹਰ ਉਹ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ ਜੋ ਕਿ ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤਮੰਦ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੂਰਾ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੂਰੀ ਸਹਾਇਤਾ ਕਰਨੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ। ਸੋ here we see that he was inspired by the values in the Sikhism, and this is reiterated also by the authors like Gurudev Singh Deol and Jagjit Singh. They tell us that in the foreign lands, the first organizations of the Sikhs were the religious organizations, because it is from the Gurudwaras that the mobilization of the people started, and the Gurdwaras served as the important places for the discussion of the social and the political grievances of the people who had settled down abroad. So the Sikhs were all inspired, and it will be wrong to say that the Free Society of Northern America had made them the way they were and organized them and motivated them to organize themselves for the revolutionary movement. But it was only the Sikhism and the values that they brought of the Sikhism with them in the foreign countries that had inspired them actually to organize themselves and to be ready for self-sacrifice, for sharing with the others, and also for caring for the others. Then besides this, there were many personal experiences of Sohan Singh Bhakna which made him the strong and charismatic personality. One such experience was the American labor, which hated the Indian labor, which had migrated over there. And the reason for this was that the Indian immigrant labor was ready to work in the American factories at a very low wage as compared to the organized American unions. वो organized सन, वो घट वेतन ते काम नहीं करते सन, और इंडियन इमिग्रेंट्स ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹਨ ਉਹ ਘੱਟ ਵੇਤਨ ਤੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਤਿਆਰ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸਨ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਅਮਰੀਕਨ ਲੇਬਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਬਹੁਤ ਜੈਲਸ ਸੀ, ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਦਾ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੈਂਟ ਲੇਬਰ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਤੀ ਇੱਕ ਡਿਸਲਾਈਕ ਸੀ, ਪਸੰਦ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਸਨ, and they were stigmatized as the strike breakers because they would often replace the American labor at the time of the strikes. But the real intention of the Indian labor was not to harm the American labor in any respect or the manner. They readily had accepted the lower wages because they were anxious to meet their family obligations, and also, as I had already mentioned, to save up the money so that the money could be sent back, the savings could be sent back to the family to pay off the debts and other such things. But there is no denying the fact that this kind of hatred for the Indian immigrant labor by the Americans had become one of the causes for the establishment of Asiatic Exclusion League. And this league had the aim to exclude and to shun all the immigrants and the people out of their land. So first this movement was against the Japanese and the Chinese, and later on this became the movement for all the Asians, and that is why this name Asiatic Exclusion League, which was formed in America and Canada alike. Sohan Singh personally experienced that British paternalism, माई बाप की जो theory है कि British साडे माई बाप हैं, और ये theory सिर्फ British नहीं देती है, और फिर I would like to refer to Dr. Dharamjit's address when he said that the British, they had been always putting forth the pseudo-scientific theories like white man's burden theory or civilizing mission, where they strongly emphasized the point that it was the burden on the white men to reform the savages and the uncivilized people of India. So here also we see the माई बाप theory, the paternalistic theory of the British also was the one which had been propounded and propagated by them, but it was a sham and it was a farce. And this was realized by Sohan Singh Bhakna while he was in the foreign land. The undue restrictions had been imposed on Indian immigrants by the Canadian government, which shocked Sohan Singh Bhakna, especially why? Because he was always under this impression that Canada, just like India, was another colony of the British, and the Indians had all the right to settle down in the British colonies, any of the British colonies, including Canada. But here he is saying that Canadian government on the arrival of the Indian immigrants in their land. And when he read the literature and met many people, he found that the Imperial Council, as early as in 1897, had announced that merely being the subjects of the British government does not give Indians the right to settle in the British colonies. The white owners of these colonies have the right to permit or not to permit the Indians to settle. So this statement, when he read, this had really shocked him. And he could then, realize why there was the racial inequality. Why was there racial discrimination? Why was there racial hatred in the foreign countries? Because the British, they are not all there as a paternal authority to safeguard and protect the interest of the Indians in the various colonies. Then we see that he also read about Canada's Friendship Society, the British Friendship Society, which had sent the deputation to the London Conference held in 1911, requesting to lift the restrictions on Indian immigrants, but this did not succeed to bring any results positive for the Indians. And similarly, we find that there were the deputations led by Khalsa Diwan Society and many other organizations before the United India League, but which had appealed to the home government, but we find that nothing could bring the positive results for the Indians, and nothing could change their plight as the racially inferior race in the foreign lands. But this had exposed and this had taken guard off the paternal pretense of goodness for Indians. So this has been realized well by Sohan Singh Bhakna, and then he could start his movement ahead. So when we are talking so much of the paternalism as a farce, we must refer to some instances that Sohan Singh experienced of racism in the foreign land. Of course, there was the avowed intention of the Canadian and American government to shun the Indians out, and they made all endeavors so that the Indians should not settle into their colonies. And one such attempt was also done by the Canadian government when they tried to migrate, make the Indians migrate from Colombia to the British Honduras. ਹੁਣ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਹੌਂਡੂਰਸ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਹੈ ਉਸ 'ਤੇ ਮਲੇਰੀਆ ਇਨਫਲੂਐਂਜ਼ਾ ਅਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਬਿਮਾਰੀਆਂ ਹਨ, ਹਿਊਮਿਡ ਪਲੇਸ ਹੈ, ਔਰ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਰਹਿਣ ਦੇ ਕਾਬਿਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਲੇਕਿਨ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਪ੍ਰੈਸ਼ਰ ਪਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਇੰਡੀਅਨਸ 'ਤੇ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾ ਕਰ ਰਹਿਣ ਅਤੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਨੂੰ ਖਾਲੀ ਕਰ ਦੇਣ। Now this could be averted. The settlement of the Indians, which was intended by the Canadian government, that could be averted because of the very bold stand and the position taken by 2 Sikhs who were taken first time to this land, and then they were being pressurized to report falsely that this place was suitable for the Indians. But they reported boldly that the place was highly unsuitable for the Indians to settle down there, and they brought into the light the fact that the state was infested with the malaria and other diseases. Neither the weather conditions nor the economic conditions were suitable for the Indians so that they could settle down there. Besides this, Colonel Swain, he also had praised in his report the good and great qualities of the Indians, and at the same time he warned the Canadian government that if the interests of Indians were harmed, they might harm the government as well as the British. Though in the end of the report, he had recommended that the Indian immigrants should not be allowed to settle down in the Canadian lands. But this had given the idea to Sohan Singh and his friends that Indians, just like in India, were being considered racially inferior, and there was not any escape out of this attitude, racial attitude of the Canadians or the Americans. Bhakna narrates another incident where Bhakna and his friend Kehar Singh, they wanted to open one commercial company, and this company would buy the Indian goods at the reasonable rates and sell in America. So there was a free trade policy in America. So seeing that, Sohan Singh Bhakna and his friend, they were encouraged to bring up this proposal, and they also bought some Indian samples of articles and they brought them here in America, which of course were examined. But we see that whereas on one hand, the American government or the traders, they had praised the reasonable price of these Indian articles, but at the same time, following mercantilism or the mercantilist policy, they wanted to safeguard the interests of the American traders, and therefore they decided to impose heavy taxes on all these Indian goods. So this was contrary to the free trade policy of America, and therefore this led Sohan Singh Bhakna to file the legal suit against the policy. But unfortunately, the decision and the final verdict of the court came late, and because of this delay, many of the orders which had been placed for the Indian goods by the Americans got cancelled, and the sample articles which had been stored in the American stores, they also perished. But again, Sohan Singh Bhakna, through this experience, realized that only independent nations could have the free right of trade. The racial discrimination was seen everywhere in America, whether it was theatre, or it was saloon, or it was cinema, and everywhere the seats were set apart for the Indians, just like in India. And Sohan Singh, during one of the tours with his friend, Professor Teja Singh Mastana, entered the hotel in America for a lunch, and he was shocked again when the manager informed them that there was no seat available for them. So he refused admission of the Indian immigrants in his hotel. And then Sohan Singh Bhakna and his friend, they both had to go to the Japanese hotel for the afternoon meals. This was not applicable only to the hotel and hotel managers. We see the similar kind of the treatment being meted out to the Indian immigrants in the American factories. And the factory managers, they also had the similar kind of the attitude of racial discrimination. So once Sohan Singh Bhakna, along with his friend for the job, had asked the factory manager in America, who informed them that there was the job but not for them. And when it was asked why, the reason for it, then he told them, then he started making mockery of the 300 million people, the population of India. He said that these people, such a large number of the people, was akin to the large number of the sheep, because had not they been sheep, they would have liberated their country from the British yoke. So he offered to provide them the guns, and he asked them first to go to India to liberate the country and come back. And once they are liberated, he would offer them the job. So these experiences had a great impact on the mind of Sohan Singh Bhakna, who was becoming more and more serious of taking the action and also to improve the lot of the Indian immigrants outside. Besides this, the abuses used to be heard, I'm not going into details, by the Americans, and the violent attacks also were made on the Indians at several occasions. And one was the parade of the occasion of the parade of the 1,000 members of the Asiatic Exclusion League in the city of Bellingham in Washington, where we see that riots took place and lots of Indians, they were beaten, tortured, and they were left half-clothed. So all this, of course, was having the impact on Sohan Singh Bhakna, and this evoked a very strong reaction, not within him, but many of his friends and the Indian immigrants abroad whom he was organizing. The net result of this kind of the attitude and the harsh treatment meted out to the Indian immigrants was that they now believed that no reformist propaganda would work for them to improve their lot and to improve the attitude of the foreigners towards them. So they will not have any respect till the revolution is brought, the real change is brought with the armed insurrection or the rebellion, so that there should be fear in the minds of everyone, and they must think twice before they racially mistreat or maltreat with the Indians. To Astoria, and they opened up the branch of this association over there, and the president of the branch was Kesar Singh and the chief secretary was Munshi Karim Baksh. While he had opened this revolutionary organization, there was the deep impact of the revolutionary personality of Baba Hardyal on Sohan Singh Bhakna. In fact, Baba Hardyal was invited by Sohan Singh Bhakna himself to Astoria because he had heard a lot about Baba Hardyal and his fiery speeches that he was making in San Francisco and nearby areas. So on his invitation, we see that Lala Hardyal came to St. John along with Bhai Parmanand in March 1930, and in his speech he exhorted the members of the association and all those who were present that they must resort to the armed revolution to liberate India. So he instilled in all the people who were present there the spirit of patriotism and passion. And the name of the organization, Indian Association of Pacific Coast, was changed to Hindi Association of Pacific Coast, which aimed at establishing independence, equality, and republic in India. And this association then decided to start the weekly paper, Gadar, and to establish the office in San Francisco. So as per this program, it was done, and elected executive committee was also formed for this association, of which the president was Sohan Singh Bhakna, the first president elected for the association, who also was the first president of the secret commission of 3 members of this association which was formed. So it is noteworthy here that Sohan Singh Bhakna, from the very ordinary man, now became the charismatic leader. So in this connection, Johanna Ogden, he appreciates highly the basic or the common people's abilities to make history. So generally it is held, or we have the impression, that only the great men or the educated men can make history, but this is the ordinary man who I would not say was not educated. He was educated in the sense that he did not gather the education only and his knowledge only from the books, but from his experiences and personalities too. So now he, from the ordinary man, had risen to the position of the leader, the supreme leader and the president of the Gadar party. Lala Hardyal was chosen as the joint secretary, Thakar Das as the cashier, and Kesar Singh as the vice president of the party. So since this time, Sohan Singh Bhakna began to give his 100% for the organization, and we see that when Lala Hardayal was arrested, so he took up the responsibility of looking after the office at Yugantar Ashram by leaving his job, and he cared not to sacrifice his comforts, job, family for the sake of this revolution, and he was ready even to sacrifice his life when he goes back to India for the Gadar. And then Kartar Singh Saraba's sincerity had impressed Sohan Singh Bhakna, the way he had seen his devotion and dedication in the working and translating many essays of Lala Hardayal. That was overwhelming, that was amazing, and that had influenced all his colleagues, including Sohan Singh Bhakna. Then in the end, before I conclude, I would like to give tribute to Sohan Singh himself, the influence of Sohan Singh himself on him. So Sohan Singh had the unflinching faith in himself and his leadership, because we know that no person is a born leader. The situations, personalities, experiences exert pressure and influence a person to become a leader who may succeed or who may not succeed. For the successful leader, it is important that he must have the faith in himself and his leadership. And Sohan Singh Bhakna was the successful leader because of these qualities. As a determined and dedicated leader, he sacrificed his comforts, and he was ready to sacrifice his life for the cause of the independence of the country. He led the party members and the Gadar to expose publicly that the British policy was to harm all the Indians, and they could bring only famine, plague, influenza, death for them. He exhorted everyone as a true leader that independence of their country alone could redress their grievances. And as I just mentioned, that at the arrest of Lala Hardayal, he did not mind giving up his job to handle the affairs in the office of Yugantar Ashram, where he came. And then he went to the various Indian settlements on foot to make people aware of the program of Gadar Party, raise funds and enroll more and more members. He circulated Gadar, which reached the far-off places including Penang, Burma, Siam, etc. And he prepared everyone for the revolution under his leadership. So he was the man with a forward-looking approach who did his best for the progress of the country. In line with the true spirit of the true leader, Bhakna took the responsibility of handing over the arms and the weapons himself to the passengers of Kamagata Maru. So he did not depend upon anyone. He himself went to deliver the arms. And he did not stay back in America as the conventional leader when it was a time for the instruction. So he came to India himself to take the forefront position and lead his people. Dr. Karan Bir Singh he has interviewed Prem Singh Bajaj. He has all praise for Sohan Singh Bhakna, and he says that in our history, such personalities are a rarity. बहुत rare हैं who had the intense love and the deep love for the motherland. At the outbreak of the First World War, numerous squads of Gadarites, they were sent to India for rebellion. Of course, Kamagata Maru incident had hastened the start of Gadar movement, and the date of the uprising was first fixed at 21st February, which was preponed to 19th Feb 1915. But because of the police alert and because of the early arrest of the several Gadar leaders, the movement did not succeed in fulfilling its immediate aims. I would put it like this. And Bhakna, he, as the astute person with the ceaseless energy and enthusiasm, did not rest even after Gadar, and with his leftist moorings, he made all efforts to establish egalitarian society in India till his death on 20th December 1968. The appellation of Baba has been prefixed with the name of Sohan Singh as a mark of deep respect and reverence. Also, the birth anniversary of Baba Sohan Singh is celebrated in his native village Bhakna each year on 4th January to commemorate him. But in view of his commendable accomplishments, I personally feel that Baba Sohan Singh deserves much more a recognition than this to become a household name. Thank you very much.